So I kind of want your take. He said it kind of happened differently throughout the country. When did it start that too many pastors in these American churches started to silence themselves?
So after the revolution, you had France having a revolution, and the situation in France was a little different, where they didn't want to just get rid of the king; they wanted to get rid of the king's church, which over there was Catholic. And they thought, well, while we're at it, let's just get rid of all organized churches and and even get rid of traditional Christianity. And so during the French Revolution, they did not want done in the year of the Lord. They made 1792 the new year one of the Republic. They didn't want a 7-day week because it went to the Bible. So they came up with a 10-day week, a decade week. Each day had 10 hours. Each hour had 100 minutes. Each minute had 100 seconds. They said 10 was the number of man because you counted with 10 fingers. And so they made every measurement in France divisible by 10. They called it the metric system. Maybe that's why I never really liked the metric system. And so it was an effort to de-Christianize everything about France. And then they had Robespierre was the head of their Homeland Security, their Committee on Public Safety. And he actually gave a speech in 1792 called Terror Justified. And he said that it's okay for the government to commit terrorist attacks on its own population because it gets them into fear. And when they're in fear, they surrender their freedoms to the state. And now we can do our new state republic. And so every day he'd come out with a new list of people who didn't want to go along with this new state belief, and they would be dragged into the streets of Paris and beheaded. And they had to invent a nice, clean head chopping off machine called the guillotine. So they first chopped off the king, Louis XVI, and his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette. And then they chopped off the heads of the royalty. It didn't get better. Then they chopped off the heads of the wealthy. It didn't get better, right? You have money, we don't. You're somehow bad. Then they chopped off the heads of the businessmen and farmers. You got food and supplies, we don't. You're bad. Then they chopped off the heads of the hoarders, the people that had extra food. You got extra, we don't have enough. You're bad. You're selfish. Then they chopped off the heads of the pastors because they were speaking out against the head chopping off stuff. Then they chopped off the heads of the former revolutionaries, the ones that used to chop off heads but got tired of it, right? And 30,000 people had their heads chopped off in Paris. And then they sent their army to the Vendée, a rural area that was very religious, Catholic, and they killed 300,000 men, women, and children. And it's considered the first modern genocide and was a model for every socialist revolution since. And so so during, after the revolution, there was this, what's called the Francophile, the people that loved France, like Thomas Jefferson. And so we had this open door. Anything from France must be good. But then this French Revolution, this stuff coming over, it's shocking people, but it comes onto the college campuses. And these students are embracing this French secularism, so much so that they almost completely abandon their faith. And so you begin to see this tug of war. So you have this infiltration on college campuses of this French wokeness, deism, Unitarianism, and there's a pushback. Timothy Dwight is the grandson of Jonathan Edwards, and Timothy Dwight is the president of Yale. And rather than sit in his office when all this French secularism is infiltrating, he goes down to the lunch tables and he sits with the students. And he lets them mouth off on all their French infidelity stuff. And then when they're done, he says, okay, I listened to you, now you listen to me. And he goes through point by point, refuting them all. And he starts a revival. So much so that the majority of the student body becomes Christian, and about a third of them go into the ministry and become missionaries themselves. And so you begin to see this splitting where you have this excitement about Jesus on one side, but on the other side, you have this secularism. Unfortunately, Harvard voted in one of these woke people as president in like the middle half of the 1800s. And this gradually began to push out anybody that believed in traditional Judeo-Christian thought. And since Harvard was such an influential university, other ones started to follow suit until they would just back away from real Bible faith, and they would just say, well, just God in general, and then and then they would, and then you know, eventually it became the New Age. I mean, it's like God can be anything, and um, but that was a real turning point.